In today's video, Home Alone. Creepy guy joined me in the hostel bathroom. Creepy driver. Something eerie I experienced as a teen. Hi. I'm new here. First, a disclaimer to the mods, I'm extremely new to Redding. Please forgive me and my lack of adherence to your rules for verification. If you message me, I can provide anything you need. Please give me a brief window of grace while I learn the ways of the Redditor. Haha. Anyways, on to the story. I grew up with both of my parents and brother in a small rancher house within a suburb off of the highway. Things were always quiet, and crime rarely ever happened. We were the only kids on our street, and were surrounded by other houses with old couples. Due to this fact, I was comfortably left at home alone quite often whenever the others wanted to go somewhere late. This story occurred once my brother was old enough to drive and hang out with his friends on his own. One fateful night, my brother was out very late, and my parents went out on a date, planning to come back around 11 p.m. I was playing Halo 3 all night. That dates my story, if that helps. My 14-year-old self lived for these nights alone, gaming non-stop without interruption until my parents came home. It is worth noting that I had 2 large dogs at the time, and the living room had 3 huge windows which opened toward the street. I could see about half of the driveway from the couch where I was gaming. At around 10:30 p.m., I hear what sounds like a car door. I'm thinking that it must be a neighbor, since I didn't see a car pull into the driveway. But the dogs said otherwise. The dogs were freaking out as if my parents pulled in. I, not thinking anything of it, stayed where I was, and yelled at them to stop. Our dogs are well trained, and wait patiently by the door. I see what looks like a silhouette or 2 pass by the windows, so I go to shut off the Xbox. Now I'm thinking that my parents came home a bit early. No biggie. I put my controller away, and I hear the doorknob jiggle. It's unlocked. I yell, as I go to the kitchen to get myself a glass of milk. Again, no biggie. I hear the doorknob jiggle once more. The dogs go back to barking. Weird. I could have sworn it was unlocked. Hold on, I'm coming, I yell. I take a second to get my glass of milk prepared. Look, I was a teenager. I had selfish and dumb priorities. Looking back, I'm kinda glad I did. That extra minute may have spared me. I go back to the front door, and I see that it actually was locked. Huh. Weird. I unlock it and walk away. It's unlocked now, I say, and go back to the kitchen. The dogs basically have their noses against the door, trying to get to my parents. After about another minute, I'm genuinely confused. I go back and open the door. No one's there. I peek my head out, and look down the sidewalk. I look to the other side of the yard. There's no car, and no person. The road is clear. Who the heck jiggled the doorknob? Where is the car door I heard? Now I'm freaked out. I called Mom's cell, and told her what happened. She said we're on our way home. Call Mr. Jimmy, next door neighbor who owns a 12 gauge, and we'll be there soon. So I locked the house down as much as possible while calling Mr. Jimmy. He said he'd be right over. I'm looking outside, making an effort to look opposite of wherever he patrols, in case the perp, CSI lingo. Ran from him. Absolutely no sign of anyone. Mr. Jimmy then comes inside and waits with me, saying that he didn't see or hear anything. Nothing like this ever happened since. Neighbors never reported any break-ins or suspicious characters, as far as I know. My mother is 100% convinced that it was just late, and I was delirious. Wouldn't be the first time that I sleepwalked or sleep-talked, but I've learned to know the difference. I believe that I was fully conscious. Like I said, I've lived a fairly normal and uneventful life. No crime or risk of life to speak of, except for this one thing, so I thought I'd share. I hope you got a kick out of my mildly creepy experience. Haha. So it was early 2020 and I was on a trip with a friend in London. We're 2 22-year-old girls and we just wanted to spend the weekend looking around the galleries and getting a feel for the city as we were thinking of moving there. We were staying in a kind of dingy hostel in East London, but we were barely ever there. We'd stumble late at night after being out most nights. We were in a shared room with 2 other sets of bunk beds. Most nights we weren't really aware of others being in the room, other than the odd snorer who was gone by morning, but on our last night a new person had arrived. We noticed he'd laid his clothes out neatly on the bed and all his shoes were lined up perfectly against the wall. He was sleeping under the duvet, despite his clothes being left on top of the bed, almost like he'd heard us coming and jumped in before we came into the room. The light was on too. We were both pretty drunk so didn't take much notice and went to sleep ourselves. The next morning we were flying home on a really early flight, like 6 a.m. When we woke up, around 3:30 a.m., he was already awake, and while we were both getting our things together. We noticed he was taking his stuff out of his bag methodically and then putting them back in a really particular order. He was muttering under his breath but wasn't saying anything we could make out, but he kept laughing to himself and got progressively louder. We both texted back and forth about how odd he seemed to be, but we were leaving soon so we weren't too worried about it. I walked into the bathroom to brush my teeth, the door slightly ajar. My friend was directly outside finishing her makeup, so I didn't see the point in shutting the door and locking it just to brush my teeth. Seconds after I walked in, he walked in. I froze but then thought I should try to act as normal as possible instead of reacting or freaking out, as that might cause him to lash out, and I could already tell he wasn't totally normal. While I'm standing there brushing my teeth, he stares into the mirror at himself for about 20 seconds, almost glaring at himself. He seemed angry. He started grinding his teeth and grunting too. Then he switched the tap on and started flinging water at his face, most of it flying behind him or all down his clothes. He kept making the grunting sounds and they were getting louder. Bearing in mind, I was about 2 feet away from him just trying to brush my teeth. I was completely freaking out, so I swallowed my toothpaste without rinsing and walked out of the bathroom. My friend was sitting outside, her eyes really wide, and she was shaking. She said when I walked into the bathroom he stopped what we were doing, stared at my friend, smiled really creepily and walked in after me, keeping eye contact with her, which was odd because he never tried to make eye contact with me. We grabbed our stuff and ran straight downstairs. At first I was so tired I didn't fully process how weird it was, but looking back it could have been really dangerous and was definitely very weird. Creepy man who decided to join me in the bathroom, I hope I never see you again. Hello. So this is one of the many creepy things that has happened to me and it really did freak me out, so a little brief about me. I'm 20 and I'm from India. 2019, I had taken a year off from school due to some complications, so while I was figuring stuff out I was at home for the whole year. And like every time something negative would happen and it would get to me and I couldn't stay home, I would go to a mall or go get myself some waffles, alone. So this one day, I had a really bad fight with a former partner and I was not okay at all, so I decided to go get some waffles cause it really does help me to go out alone and chill by myself. In India we have this cab service called Ola and I always prefer it over Uber. I booked myself an auto. It's a vehicle, a rickshaw. My driver was wearing khakis, and a brown shirt with a khaki shirt over it. He looked me up and down while I walking towards the auto, and as a woman being looked up and down is pretty common, so I didn't think much of it even though it did make me uncomfortable. I was wearing shorts and a loose shirt, not much cause I was on my own, so I didn't really need to dress up as such. I sat and gave him the OTP, one-time password, and I was listening to music, and while I was doing so, he was signaling his hands at me, and at first I didn't understand what he was doing, but I realized he was trying to converse with me. I took an earphone off and he started asking me questions, and I don't mind conversations with people, and I didn't expect him to go to the extent of being unnecessary and asking me weird questions. He started off by asking me how old I am and if I'm in college, and I answered cause at the time I didn't think of it as anything, but then he started asking me more personal questions like if I have a boyfriend, and who I'm going to meet. And me being the dumbass I am, I said no, I don't have a boyfriend, and I really wish I told him I did, but he then asked me if I'm meeting my friends and I said yes, and he said, oh, guy friends? And I'm like, yes. After that he didn't talk to me and I was trying to text my friends and even the guy I liked at the time, but nobody responded to me. I'm not the type of person who freaks out immediately, and because he stopped talking I was calm. Uncomfortable but calmer. And then I continued to listen to music, and then we reached the destination and I paid him, and as I got down the auto and started walking he stopped me and he's like, ma'am, listen. Can I ask you something? And he was trying to speak to me in English cause I don't know Hindi and can't speak any other language. And I'm like, yes, sure. And he's like, please ma'am, can I have your number? I'm a very nice man, I promise you I won't send you anything weird. And I'm like, I'm sorry, no, I'm not interested. And then I started walking cause I got scared then, and he started following me in his auto, and he's like, please ma'am, and I'm like, no, I'm sorry, and he kept begging and let me out. I was 19 at the time, and tops this man was like 45 plus. He just followed me for a few minutes until I got to the place, and I got so scared, and I ran into the waffle place and I sat there super shook, and even when I left I was so scared that he was around or would follow me home or something, but thankfully he didn't, and I went home right after eating.